Hello, YouTube. Good morning on this July 4th. It's July 4th that quick? Wow. It is summertime. So, your girl watching her movies, and I love my movies. So, there's a new Lifetime movie, was new to me, called the Tanya Kach story. Last name is Kach. And I just wanted to talk about this movie because it's very unique. It's unlike any other Lifetime movie that I've seen. And I just wanted to ask you, the viewers, your opinion of this story. So the girl, Tanya, this goes back into 1996. This is an old story. And she was 14 in middle school, and he held her captive for 10 years. Now, for some people, the word captive means chained up, locked up, whatever. Why do I say this story is so unique? First of all, she willingly went to his house. Yes, you heard correctly. She willingly went to his house. She was a foster care kid, and shame on the foster care system. They should have, because he didn't live far from the school. So they should have been looking for her in each and every house, and they did not. It's similar to the girls that went missing and was living with the school bus driver years ago. And it's just like, if they would have just looked a little bit harder, he was in the neighborhood, basically. So with Tanya Kach, he took advantage of her vulnerability. What happened was is she ran away from her foster care home. First of all, her mother in the movie just was not caring. Her mother had a boyfriend, and she had her own home. And the mother wasn't in her life. And then she ran away from her foster care home because some guy had touched her, and she told them, and they didn't believe her. So she ran away. So she tells the security guard at the school, and he's like, before he moved her in, he was giving her gifts. He was telling her, he would favor her. So I was reading up on it because I just never heard of a story like this. It's very unique to me. He groomed her. So he made her believe that he cared about her in a romantic way. She did claim him as her boyfriend. She did. So I think that's what made the case very confusing, because this was your significant other. Okay, he's wrong for coming on to you. He was a grown man. But less than 100 years ago, it was perfectly fine. It was not illegal for a 38-year-old man to get with a 14-year-old. It was very normal in the 1800s, in the 1900s, even in the 1950s. You had a lot of young girls that got married to older men, even in the 1950s, because why? A lot of women could not provide for themselves, so they had no choice but to be with these old farts. It's yeah. So pretty much this story is her word versus his. She says that they had sex every day. That's not sex. That, like, did you want to have sex with him? You know what I'm saying? Like, and regardless of the fact, that's considered rape, because at 14 you still a kid. But you do have 14-year-olds who have older boyfriends, and they do marry these men sometimes, and they have children. So that's what makes it very confusing. Like, it's her word versus his. She says she was captivated, how he threatened her and stuff like that. And watching the movie is just very, very liberating, and it's unfortunately very common. You have a lot of women in relationships and even marriages. He proposes to her in the movie. They don't get legally married, but he introduces her as his girlfriend to his parents. So they are in this relationship that his parents knew about. They didn't know that she was in the house from 14 years old. That part the parents didn't know. But in the movie, the mother is just so, like, naive. about what's going on. When she would go to the store or go out in public, people knew that something was wrong because she was acting weird, you know. Anybody with any type of compassion could see that she was being abused. And that's another thing. The movie never really showed him being physically abusive. He like would smack her around here and there, but he didn't really like kick her, punch her. Like most of the Lifetime movies of people getting captivated, they get treated way, way worse. Like he let her go out to go shopping. And I feel like deep down inside, he kind of knew what he did was wrong, because if you're holding somebody hostage, why would you let them go outside? Like, that was the part I couldn't understand. Like, maybe she was dragging a story. I don't know. He was wrong for keeping her because she was a minor. And that's why he only went to jail for, I sort of, because I did the research and she actually was on the news. Her therapist sued her. Her father sued her. She had like a really shitty family. But it's just confusing because you have a lot of girls who they are with guys in an older relationship, and they get older and they don't cry rape. They don't say, oh, I was captive or whatever. But I wanted to ask you, my YouTube audience, what makes a person captive? What makes them... Because we could say that for a lot of women. You have a lot of women that are in very dysfunctional marriages. They're not allowed to work. According to this, she was allowed to work. So that's where I'm confused. Like, how you going to say he captivated you or had you captive, but you was allowed to work? You was allowed to get your hair done. You was allowed to go to the store. You were allowed to, you know, yes, he kept you in the house for 4 years. So I feel like that's where they punished him, because it started off as, oh, you have nowhere to go, you could stay with me. And then he just took it, he dragged it, basically, because he should have never touched her in a sexual manner. That's gross. You know, some people, they don't see it as a big deal, but that's gross. You 38. Why are you looking at a 14-year-old like that? That's nasty. But it was going on in Bible days, like Mary and Joseph. They said how Joseph was in his late 30s and Mary was 15. It wasn't until women started getting jobs and education for themselves, and as late as the 60s and the 70s, that people saw something wrong with abusing young women. Because stuff like that been going on for thousands of years, when you think about it. Thousands, hundreds of years. You know, where a woman is 14, 15, they say that that's the prime. Most women were having children at that age. Back in the days, 1800s, and even before that, just Bible days. Mary had Jesus at 15. She was 15 years old, which means she was probably pregnant at 14. And Joseph was in his late 30s, right? So they were living together as a couple, right? They were engaged when Jesus was born. They later got married. A lot of those women back then, and as late as the 1950s, you could say they was held captive too, because they didn't want to be with those old farts. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this situation is so unique to me. I've never heard of anything like it. The movie, they didn't really show like him. He would like smack her around, but it wasn't like your normal slave captive type stuff. You know, I think that's why they put him in jail, because yes, he was having sex with a minor, and that is illegal. They actually passed a law down as recent as 94. It used to be legal to do that, but in 94, and they actually made a movie about it. It's called In My Daughter's Honor, and the teacher was messing around with her, and that's when they made it a law that it's against the law to do that with a minor, or whatever. Because what people don't realize is right on up until you 19, you can't really, your brain is still developing. So she looked at it as she didn't have nowhere to go and stuff like that. And how many women in dysfunctional marriages, they say the same thing. You be like, well, why can't you leave? What the hell, Oh, I have nowhere to go. So it's the same thing with this situation. She felt like she had nowhere to go. She felt like, I'm pretty sure when she was 15, 16, 17, 18, that's how she felt, and that's why she stayed. But is that a reason to put somebody in jail, though? That's the question, So, yes, he might have been abusive. Yes, he might have been a little harsh. But I feel like, and it's 15 years enough, because at the end of the day, her word versus his is her word versus his. That's what it really boils down to. There are no witnesses to her abuse, right? As far as his parents were concerned, she was the girlfriend, right? She herself told the neighbor, that's my boyfriend, right? So, though he might have been a little verbally abusive, is that a reason to go to jail? And if you feel like he should have went to jail for longer, comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. But yes, Tanya Kach's story, and Elizabeth Smart reached out to her and decided to make this movie on Lifetime, but it's very unique. I mean, I've never heard of any story like it before. And it just makes you think about all the dysfunctional relationships that where the guy is controlling. Should it be a crime? Should it be a crime to be controlling? Because that's what he was. He let her go to the store, but she had to be back at a certain time. Unfortunately, I've heard that before. Carly Red on Love and Hip Hop, she had a curfew, right? She had to be back home at a certain time. So what they call is Stockholm Syndrome. It's real. It's very, very common. So watching this story is very interesting. But should a man go to jail for being verbally abusive, right? There's no evidence that he was ever physically abusive. The police wasn't called. She didn't have any bruises when they picked her up. And that's very important, right? According to her, he threatened her every day, said that he would kill her every day. But if he really was going to kill you, right, wouldn't he have at least attempted to? Like, the story just has so many holes in it. Like, if somebody threatens to kill you, most of the time, they going to at least kick you. They going to punch you. They going to put some pine sol in your food. They going to do something more aggressive than just slap you around. Not saying that slapping her around ain't bad enough. But it's a very interesting story, I must admit. And I can only imagine how the jury felt. It's like, was she just being a fast-ass 14-year-old? That's how they thinking, like, because at the end of the day, she claimed this man as her boyfriend. She said, oh, that's my boyfriend. She told the neighbor that's her boyfriend, right? He said, you can come stay with me, right? He invited her over. He did not drag her in the street like the killer clown into his basement. That's not what happened, folks. He invited her over. She came over. And it started off as he was helping her. And then it progressed into something else. And then he said she couldn't leave, right? So that's where the captivation starts, when you want to leave and the person is like, no, you can't leave. So that's why he went to jail as well, too. If you're trying to leave, ladies, right, and a man tell you you cannot leave, call the police and he will go to jail for captivity, right? So again, it's his word versus hers. But comment, like, and subscribe, and comment your thoughts.